Yo, what is up, guys? It's coming back again tonight with another video, another recap of the NBA games from today. We had some really good games today. Specifically, Warriors Celtics might have been game of the year. This was an incredible duel between Tatum and Curry, and I'll get to that in a second. I'm probably going to talk about that game the most, and then I just kind of want to talk about Russell Westbrook for a little bit, particularly kind of the similarities I see between Curry and Russell Westbrook's season so far. It's been an incredible season for both of them. They are both putting up in fantastic numbers like they typically do. They're two of the better players that we've seen in a while, and I just wanted to give them their credit where credit is due. A lot of people came into the season saying that Russell Westbrook was washed, that like Curry sat out last season because he couldn't win games or that he wouldn't be good without a super team type stuff, which was just dumb. Typical, like really dumb narrative stuff. But I'll talk about all that in a second. Before I start that, I want to say I appreciate y'all supporting the videos. Go ahead and drop a like, drop a subscribe if you like NBA content like this pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day, depending on if there's a game recap or not. So be on the lookout for stuff like that. But like I said, Warriors Celtics might have been game of the year. I mentioned Jason Tatum and Steph Curry. These two players both went at each other with over 40 points each. This was amazing, just them trading buckets back and forth. Kemba Walker also came to play tonight with above a 20-point game, and he did it efficiently. This was a great game for Kemba Walker. Really a pretty good showing from the Boston Celtics, winning without Jaylen Brown, given the Warriors were missing their own guys, Kelly Oubre, James Wiseman, but Jaylen Brown has been really important to the Celtics team this season, and a lot of times it's kind of just fallen on Tatum if Jaylen Brown is out to do pretty much everything for this team, and Kemba Walker really stepped up tonight. Jabari Parker, I want to give him a ton of credit because Jabari Parker played fantastic for the Celtics in this win tonight. He's been signed for like a day. He hasn't even practiced with the team yet, and he did phenomenally. And I hope Jabari Parker, he's a guy who really got derailed by injuries throughout his career. I'm really hoping he can find a staying spot with the Boston Celtics, help them try and return to the glory that they had last season, the past few seasons where they've been considered a contender. Maybe he can help them kind of find that. All he has to do is score. That's all he's got to do. He knows what he's good at. It's scoring. He had that quote back in like 2018 where he was like, they don't pay players in the NBA to play defense, and he doesn't necessarily need to do that. He's just got to score the basketball. Defense obviously is something he should do, but if he's scoring the basketball, he's helping out the Boston Celtics, a team that really needs a lot of bench scoring. Evan Fournier was a great addition, but even with him, they still really lack on that end of the ball, and if Jabari Parker can provide them like 5 to 10 points a night, that's a huge boost for them. So shout out to Jabari Parker, great game from him tonight. Outside of him, like I said, Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker had fantastic games, and that was why the Celtics ended up getting the win. They just were clutch in those situations. They made things happen. On the other side of the ball, though, you have Steph Curry, man, who has just been unreal. This might be the best stretch we've ever seen from Steph Curry. This is some of his best play of all time, and that's including his unanimous MVP season and his MVP season before that. Curry's been phenomenal. He just does not have the help that a player needs. In the NBA, it's really star-driven. You can have a superstar type player, but you'll notice at times there's very few players in the league that can just fully drag a franchise, even with lackluster talent, to kind of further places than like a first round exit. It's very tough without that secondary star or at least a bunch of great pieces around you. And so Curry's really struggling with that. He's doing his best. He had just tied Kobe Bryant for the longest streak of a player this age, scoring above 30 points consecutively. I believe this was his 10th game in a row, scoring over 30 points. And it's not even just like he's barely hitting 30. He's hitting like nearly 50, like so many nights in and out. Curry's just been incredible, and for a guy that a lot of people came into the season saying that he was going to struggle and that he was going to really falter without a super team, they were just wrong. This team is not good. They're just not good, and Steph Curry is the only reason this team is really relevant. Even if Steph Curry was playing like a little bit worse, this team would be terrible. But because of Steph Curry, they're a competent team. Draymond Green has had some good moments. James Wiseman has shown some promise here and there. Wiggins has been pretty solid this season. Oubre hasn't quite been what they've been looking for. They don't have any depth, and even with those guys, none of those guys are secondary star, especially at this point in their careers. Maybe a few years ago, Draymond Green could have elevated this team a little bit more, but at this point, he is a little bit older. And we can talk about Andrew Wiggins, who used to be a pretty good scorer, but now he's a more defensive-oriented player. There's just not much scoring on this team. It is pretty much Steph Curry to run the offense and be the offense, and when he's off the court, not much is going on. So without all that being said, I want to give a huge shout out to Steph Curry for the way he's been playing. Like I said, this is some of, if not the best basketball we may have ever seen from Steph Curry. I'm just incredibly amazed every night because I know how good he is. I've seen him play, watched him rise up, win that first championship, and continue to dominate the league the next season and the season after and the season after. But I think people forgot how good Steph Curry was. And I think people forgot how fun Steph Curry is because of the way he played with a super team for a while, specifically playing alongside Kevin Durant. As a Thunder fan, obviously, I hated the Kevin Durant move. But one of the biggest things just as a basketball fan that I hated about the Kevin Durant move was that it took away a couple, 2 or 3 seasons of Steph Curry playing like Steph Curry. His numbers now, would he have won as many championships? No, without Kevin Durant, probably not. But having those stats and those seasons taken away from us, it sucks, because I would have loved to see more seasons like this with Steph. Playing at this level that he is, he could have another MVP or two, to be honest, if Kevin Durant didn't end up going to the Golden State Warriors. But I do want to give a huge shout out to Steph. He probably would be the MVP this season. Actually, I think he would be the MVP this season if the Warriors were just a better team, and they're just not. With Klay Thompson, I think this MVP may have been Steph Curry's award to lose. And interestingly enough, it's going to be cool to see what happens next season. I think the Warriors have to make moves to put more talent around Steph. Klay Thompson coming back at this point in his career is just not going to be enough to make this team a contender again. They've got to make another move. I think if they get a top pick in the draft, if the Wolves pick falls to them, I think they have to make something happen. If they miss the playoffs and get a lottery pick, if they get lucky with it, I think you've got to package that pick, maybe a Wiseman and a contract like Andrew Wiggins. Go out, get that second star or third star, I guess, if you're considering Klay Thompson's comeback. Put him next to Steph and Klay, see what happens. But I want to see the Warriors get a better team around Steph. I don't want to see Steph play the last few seasons of his career like a Kobe Bryant, where Kobe spent the last few seasons of his career just on really bad teams. He did all he could, but eventually age just caught up with him, and just the lack of talent that was really around him at the end of his career sucked to see, because it would have been so cool to see Kobe win another championship or win or just do something more meaningful in his last few seasons as a Laker, as a NBA player. So I don't know. I don't want to see that happen to Steph Curry. I want to see him be able to succeed, and I want to see him stay on the Golden State Warriors. I don't want to see Steph on a different team. I'm not on the whole free Steph movement. I'm on the get Steph some help movement. I want to see him finish out his career in Golden State, because I think it would be wrong if Steph Curry ended up anywhere but Golden State, and I'm hoping they can put some talent around him. People said at the beginning of the season his legacy was tarnished. Like 4 games into the season, if y'all remember that, because of like a few losses to start the season. Given they were blowout losses, but you can't say a player is washed or that their legacy is tarnished or whatever because of a few games into the season. Which then leads me into the next player I want to talk about, Russell Westbrook, who the Wizards are kind of rolling right now. They're right there for the play-in tournament. I think they are going to end up making the play-in tournament, and I do think the Wizards will end up making the playoffs. Russ and Beal are tough to face off against in a play-in tournament game, especially if you have those more young and inexperienced teams and you go up against a Bradley Beal and a Russell Westbrook, who have been there and done it before in the playoffs multiple times. I think they're going to be really tough out, especially in that first round when I hope they get matched up against the Brooklyn Nets. I need to see a Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook playoff series. I know the Nets would probably win. As a Russell Westbrook fan, that hurts a lot, but it would be really cool to see. I think it would be super entertaining, and who knows, maybe the Wizards give them a game. I don't know. The Nets are really good, but this Wizards team is good. Like, Russell Westbrook this season is having an incredible year. He's on track to average a triple-double again. And I know there's the whole meme about Russell Westbrook searching for triple-doubles or whatever, but he's playing winning basketball, and that's what it comes down to. You can make jokes about him hunting triple-doubles all you want, but when it translates into winning basketball, you have to give him his credit. And like I said, he's very similar to Steph Curry this season in that coming into the season and the first portion of the season, Russ was hurt. Steph wasn't necessarily hurt, but Russ was hurt, and people talk about how he was washed and how this was kind of the end of Russell Westbrook. And it wasn't, because he's playing incredible basketball. He's playing really, really well. And I was telling people, wait until Westbrook gets healthy. And he got healthy. And what's happening? They're winning games. Russ is putting up great numbers. Also similar to Steph Curry, he doesn't quite have as much help. We could talk about a Bradley Beal, who has been really good this season. I will give him credit for that. Obviously an all-star starter, so that's nothing to scoff at. But they just don't have much outside of that. It's Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, and that's it. If this team had more help, I really wish they still had Thomas Bryant on this team. He would have been a huge pickup for them, a floor spacing big. But Daniel Gafford has been really, really good since the Wizards picked him up at the trade deadline. I thought that ended up being a really good move for both the Bulls and the Wizards. Gafford and Troy Brown Jr., the two guys that they kind of swapped, just really weren't getting the time that they needed. And honestly, sometimes that's all you need as a player. You need one switch of a team, you need a switch up of a role, and your game can be completely unlocked, like we are seeing with those two players. I do want to give a shout out to the Detroit Pistons, the team that the Washington Wizards ended up beating. Isaiah Stewart is really good. He's really, really good. Apparently the Pistons just always have to have a dominant rebounder every single generation, and he is exactly that. He's a monster on the glass, really good at putting back up his own shots. He's just good, and I'm really excited to see how he does. I think this Pistons core is heading in a really good direction. Sadiq Bey, Saban Lee, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes, like these are really good young guys. Jeremy Grant isn't super young, but he is young enough to where he could still be a pretty good player when those players develop. I'm excited to see the way the Pistons go. I think they're heading in a really good direction. I think this is the best the Pistons future has looked in a long time. Outside of those two teams and those two games, Not a ton I want to talk about. The Jazz Lakers game, I guess I'll talk about that one. A battle of two Western Conference contenders, two title contenders. And it was none of the star players really played. It was the Jordan Clarkson versus Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Andre Drummond game. It was a fun one though. Dennis Schroeder, Thunder legend, ended up who should have won Sixth Man of the Year. I will die on that hill. He played really well. He ended up clutching up for the Lakers at the end of regulation to make sure they got to go to overtime, and he ended up being probably their best player tonight. And I'm happy to see Dennis Schroeder balling out. I think people forget how good he is because he's playing next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But there were a lot of nights last season when he was the Thunder's best player on a lot of nights. He's really, really good. He's really showing up for them, and I think he's going to be critical to the Lakers' success in the playoffs. Obviously, you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, but I think Dennis Schroeder might very well be that third most important player on a lot of nights. You could also talk about like a Andre Drummond, but when you go through the West, you have a ton of guards you're going to have to try and lock up to secure victories. And Dennis Schroeder, he's a bulldog on the defensive end of the ball. He really likes playing that like hard-nosed, tough defense, as well as being a really solid scorer and a playmaker. So I think Dennis Schroeder is going to end up being their third most important player there, and it was cool to see him get this opportunity to show out. Jordan Clarkson is awesome. I love Jordan Clarkson because if there's one player in this league who reminds me of J.R. Smith in that he's going to shoot the ball, there's no shot Jordan Clarkson does not like. It's Jordan Clarkson. It's Jordan Clarkson time, as he once said. Shout out to him. Can't remember the last time we had a Sixth Man of the Year race that was this obvious in one player's favor. It's Jordan Clarkson. I don't think there's any argument there. So shout out to him. Shout out to all he's been doing for this Jazz team. He is a huge reason why they're so good. Talk about a Mitchell, talk about a Gobert, but Jordan Clarkson very well might be that third guy, making them as good as they are. And for a guy that a lot of teams kind of gave up on, cool for Jordan Clarkson. Happy to see it. The Spurs blew out the Suns, which is really weird. They beat them by 26 points. Drew Eubanks just murdered the Suns. This was just kind of a weird game. This was one that the Suns probably should not have lost, but sometimes you come out those nights and you're just flat. That was the case for them. On the Spurs side of the ball, DeJounte Murray, man, does not get talked enough about as a up-and-coming star player. DeJounte Murray is really good, and I really like DeJounte Murray's game. I thought he was going to be the most improved player last season prior to him getting injured, but I'm happy to see him finally getting the opportunity to ball out for the Spurs. I think he is probably their most promising guy for the future at this point. I would probably give it to DeJounte Murray. You've got guys like Derek White, Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker that also show a lot of promise. But if I had to pick a guy right now on the Spurs to bring to my team, I'd pick DeJounte Murray. Just a really solid, he's like a small forward that plays point guard, plays great defense, he can score the ball, is a solid playmaker, he just does everything. He's almost like a miniature Ben Simmons in kind of a way, except he can shoot better. Obviously, he doesn't quite have the defense and the playmaking of a Ben Simmons, but he is a better shooter, and I think he's going to be really integral to the Spurs going forward for their future. I would love to see the Spurs team move on from like a DeMar DeRozan type thing. I'm glad they decided to make the decision to move on from Aldridge, who I hope enjoys retirement. It sucks to see LaMarcus Aldridge go out, but I hope the Spurs continue to commit to a youth movement. I hope they move on from DeRozan and they decide to commit to this youth movement. They're going to be bad for the next 2-3 seasons, but ultimately it's going to benefit them a lot in the long run. And I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about. There was also the Cavaliers-Bulls game. Vucevic without Zach LaVine played really, really well and stepped up to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, who aren't great this season, but they're fun. Darius Garland has been really good, and I want to give him a shout out because a lot of people called him the worst player in the league last season. NBA fans give up on players really fast, and I know he wasn't good last season at all, but people are calling him a bust after 1 year, and he's been really solid this season. So I love seeing players prove people wrong, including myself. I love seeing players prove me wrong because ultimately I want to see every player succeed. I don't want to see players not succeed. That's not something I do. That's not something I root for. So it's cool to see Darius Garland stepping up and playing very well. And then we had Grizzlies Bucks, which was a 13-point win for the Memphis Grizzlies. I want to see the Grizzlies get Jaren Jackson Jr. back. I really want to see Jaren Jackson Jr. play more for this Grizzlies team. Dylan Brooks had a good game, 21, 6, and 4. Grayson Allen had 26 points. He's been really good for them this season. The Bucks just didn't quite have it tonight. 28 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists from Giannis. They just kind of felt flat. I don't know. They just didn't feel like the Bucks team that we've seen over the course of the last couple weeks where they feel dominant at times. They just came out flat. I don't know what it was. So with that being said, that's pretty much all I want to say. Let me know what you thought about the Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook I talked at the beginning. Do you think either of their teams could give a team a run for their money in the first round? Obviously, it would be tough because the Warriors would have to play the Jazz or the Suns, most likely getting that 7 or 8 seed, and the Wizards would have to play probably the Bucks, or not the Bucks, probably the Sixers or the Nets. I don't think either of those teams are going out of those first rounds, but I think there's a possibility there for them to make things interesting at least. Let me know which teams you would like to see those two teams match up against in the playoffs. And for right now, I will see you guys later. Rowan, say it back.